I recently went to the Emerald Creek Garnet area near Clarkia, Idaho, and picked up about a pound of star garnets after about 3 hours of work. Now, what I really want is to be able to polish at least one of these into a proper star garnet cabochon. I've grouped my finds into 4 different categories. There's the dodecahedrons, there's 24-sided crystals, a couple of large oddballs from much larger crystals, and in the back, just a whole bunch of fragments where I can't tell what they came from. Many of these, like this one, are very fractured and would probably fall apart if I were to try to process it too much, so I'll probably have to avoid those ones. What I've read are that the 12-sided dodecahedron crystal habits are more likely to produce star garnets. And I've tested that with just a random one where this one was already broken, so cab the bottom, and there's no asterism apparent in there with a little bit of mineral oil on there to see better. I also tested one of these 24-sided ones, which also doesn't have any asterism. I'm starting to think maybe the asterism isn't as common as has been reported. In the 281 Creek site, it's reported that almost every garnet will have asterism. However, at the Emerald Creek Garnet site, they may pull from 281 or different branches, or from the nearby Garnet Gulch, which may not have as many star garnets. There's varying and sometimes conflicting information on how best to process the star garnets. And what I'm going to do is try and test some of those. So for example, this dodecahedron has really nice crystal faces, and lots of light comes through it if you shine a light at it from behind, which I'll show a picture of here. It's reported that those types of crystals are less likely to exhibit star asterism. Now, this crystal doesn't really exhibit that same transparency to light, and yet it doesn't exhibit asterism. It's also been reported that the crystals that have a raisin-like appearance on the outside, so this is the original crystal face here, these ones are supposedly very good for having silk on the inside. And so what I'll do is round off the inside of this one and take a look and see if there's anything. In a preliminary analysis of a bunch of these at our local lapidary club, this one, which was a fragment from a much larger crystal, had a slight play of light in potential asterism on this broken face here, and so what I'm going to do today is go in and cab this one. Another suggestion was to either polish the outside of a crystal face, if you have a nice one, or to tumble the stones lightly and then use mineral oil or glycerin with a point source of light, either the sun or just a very focused light, to look inside the crystal and see if you can see any asterism on the inside. And then you could say, oh, this face would have the best one for asterism as opposed to cutting it relative to these other faces. And I tried this on this crystal, on these 3 faces. They're a little polished up, more so than the original faces. They're a little shinier. And I didn't see any asterism in this crystal either. Now, whether that's just because there isn't any asterism in here or that doesn't work, it's not clear. So what I'll have to do is perhaps cut this a little inside a little more and then polish it and see if there's any asterism on the inside. And I think what I may have to do is sacrifice a bunch of these stones and cut them in half and polish the outside to see if that technique actually works. Okay, I'm back from the rock club and still have things separated out in terms of the dodecahedrons and the 24-sided crystals, and then the 2 large odd-shaped ones with the raisin skin. The one that we thought might have some silk in it, this one, turned out to be kind of a dud. I polished a lot of the faces of it, and even if it wasn't the exact perfect way to shape them, we should still see some kind of silk inside, even if it was just a glint, and I don't see anything in there. A lot of my stones are too fractured, like this one, which just kind of falls apart the more I polish it. And out of all of these, I think I've tested the majority, either polishing the interior or the crystal faces, and the only one that shows rays is... But wait, at the end of the day, I realized I hadn't tested everything that I said I was going to test. One of the things I said I wanted to test but hadn't yet was whether or not these nice dodecahedrons would have silk inside, and if you could polish the faces of them and see the silk from the outside. And so on this one, this crystal used to be a nice dodecahedron, and I polished up the outside and didn't see any silk, either with mineral oil or glycerin. I decided to go back to the shop and polished it up, and lo and behold, there's stars on there. And I'm kind of giving away the big reveal over here as well. This was one of the raisin ones, the weird offcut sample that has a beautiful 4-ray star in it. And then on the edge, there's actually a 6-ray star, which is... one of the rays is just barely visible, but you should be able to see it there. One of the interesting things about these two matched samples, where it was a crystal cut in half, is that when I cut it in half, there was actually a 6-sided crystal form, like silk form on the inside, which hopefully shows up in the photo I took. And that seemed to match, that was paralleled the outline of the crystal face. So that may be the extent of the silk in the crystal. And what I'm interested in now is, I think I saw that in at least one other sample where there was a 6-rayed outline on the inside of one of these dodecahedrons. There may be another 4-ray star in here somewhere. One other thing I learned was that a lot of these garnets, even the whole ones, are fractured. And I think that reduces the vibrancy of the rays. This one kind of looks a little hash marked in some places. It can look kind of neat, but there's a little bit of sparkliness on the inside, especially on this one, that you can kind of see blinking in the reflection here. And that really reduces the vibrancy of the rays, I think. And that's just something to keep in mind if you prepare these garnets from very fractured crystals. You may get weak or discontinuous bands. Now, at the end of the day, the best thing you could probably do with the star garnets is to actually bring them into a shop like Gem State Minerals in Moscow, Idaho, or I think Stewart's Gem Shop down in Boise are well known for their star garnet cutting capabilities. But what I wanted to do was test out a couple of theories, and I like being able to know that, these are samples that I've prepared myself from start to finish, collected them, cut them, polished them. And before today, I'd only ever cabbed one other sample before. So these are cabs 2 through 4 in my sample collection. And it's kind of nice to be able to come away with a pretty neat treat.